You're looking at visuals of anti-Tibetan protests. They're going on. Tibetan groups, in fact, protesting in the national capital. Let's go across to Srinjoy, who will give us an idea on what exactly is happening. Over to you, Srinjoy. We'll just get in Srinjoy in a bit, but there you can see it. Tibetans protesting out on the streets there in the national capital. They, of course, are protesting against Xi Jinping's visit and the kind... And of course, you can see angry protesters with placards. They're raising the slogans.
Here in India, on the third day before he leaves, here are these Tibetan activists who have been protesting that the Indian government must address the issue of Tibet and free Tibet and for autonomy of Tibet with Xi Jinping.
Freedom of press, freedom of religion in Tibet.
You want Indian government to talk?
Yeah, we need a support for Indian government. And President, we are here to request the President to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama and resume the dialogue between Dhamsala Beji.
These are the Tibetan activists who have been demanding that with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. They have been demanding that the Indian government must cooperate and seek the autonomy of Tibet. And here are these protesters who are being forcefully taken by the police here in Delhi. They all have been doing sporadic protests across New Delhi. They took the police officers by surprise, and these protests are going on in spurts. They are being taken into preventive detention now. And they definitely have been going on with a 3-day protest here in New Delhi at various places like Majnu Ka Tila right here outside the Taj Palace where the Chinese premier is putting up, and also at the Chinese embassy. And they all have been demanding that the Indian government they are all
Srinjoy is joining us on this story. Srinjoy, over to you. If you could make us understand what exactly are these protests about and what has been the immediate provocation for it.
Well, very clearly, and even the Dalai Lama has said this yesterday, and the Tibetans believe that as far as Tibet is concerned and a clearing up of the Chinese situation in Tibet is concerned, India has a role. The Dalai Lama himself has said this yesterday, and a lot of Tibetans have taken heart from it. Now, these protests are another way of telling the Indian government, well,
Right, Srinjoy, if you can hear me, I was basically trying to understand from you that, was it Xi Jinping's visit that has provoked these protests, considering that they have come immediately after that visit? Tibetan groups really out on the streets raising slogans, and we hear that they're demanding autonomy for Tibet. There are also placards saying that the Chinese premier should meet Dalai Lama. Those are some of the things that are written on those placards.
And that it's time for the Indian government to cooperate and seek the issue. As you can see, the activists have gotten into a struggle with the police over here in New Delhi. They were all caught by surprise. The Delhi police was deployed in and around to ensure security for Xi Jinping. But amidst all this, the sporadic protests that came from the Tibetan activists. Hello.
Yes, Srinjoy, over to you. Please continue. Yes, sir, you're looking at the latest visuals coming to you from the national capital. Tibetan protesters out on the streets demanding autonomy for Tibet. They are, of course, loud and clear, saying that they would like the Chinese premier to meet Dalai Lama. There's severe protest there, and of course, police now detaining some of those protesters and taking them to preventive detention. Samya is tracking the latest developments from the ground. Samya, over to you.
No right in Tibet.
Well, as we were standing outside the Taj Palace area where the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping have been staying for the last 3 days, and we have been seeing sporadic protests across New Delhi, and definitely there was a group of these Tibetan activists and students who suddenly came, especially near the barricades where the police had put forth to try and restrain this area from any of these activities of protest in and around this area. Suddenly there were these a group of young Tibetan protesters who came here and they clashed with the police, while the protesters were very enthused since this is the last day that Xi Jinping would be here in India. They wanted to really voice their protest against Xi Jinping being over here in India, and especially demanding that it's time for the Indian government to address the issue of Tibet and take it up with his discussion and talk with the Chinese premier. They were also demanding that Xi Jinping must step forward and get an opportunity to meet Dalai Lama to discuss this entire issue about free Tibet. But then over here, it became a sort of a clash, a scuffle of sorts between Delhi police, who were taken by surprise by these group of young protesters who suddenly came to protest in a very small group, and they gradually started growing in numbers. They had the placards and flags in place, and there was almost a struggle between the Delhi police and the activists. The police was trying really hard to contain the protest, and after which a little while they were taken into all a preventive custody, preventive detention. The activists were stuffed into these police vans and taken away. But these protesters were very angry, and they were very sure to voice their protest and to hold these demonstrations over here. But definitely in the process, they got into a struggle with the Delhi police, and today we are expecting that the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping would be departing from India around 12 o'clock, and so they were sure to register their protest and hold these demonstrations right before he leaves from Delhi. Now we were parked right outside the Taj Palace area where there has been a police barricading around this entire area. There are at least 2 kilometers surrounding, ringing this entire area with police security, and there have been barricades and the area was cordoned off. But definitely these were the small group of Tibetan protesters who started collecting somewhere in the nearby lanes because they got into a big number, and then they suddenly came and started protesting.
Right. In fact, Samya, these protests were happening yesterday as well, but it seems today it has really gained in proportion for police now to come down heavily on them. And like you were saying, that many of them are being detained. Can you explain to us what exactly is happening at the moment?
Well, there was a lot of security put in place already to avoid any such untoward incident that would probably happen, because we have been seeing sporadic protests by the Tibetan activists and either Tibetan residents of New Delhi who were protesting in small numbers near the India Gate, at the Hyderabad House, at the Taj Palace, and even at the Majnu Ka Tila. But so far they were managing to contain these protests. But yesterday when it happened in the morning, there was also women police who were put in place over here. But when they suddenly came in this large number, a group of students, activists with flags and placards, and they got into a struggle, a clash of sorts with Delhi police who didn't know how to contain them because they were angry and they were resisting the police. And then they were all taken to preventive detention. Even now, the security in and around the Taj Palace area has been increased because we are expecting the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping to leave for the airport at around 12 o'clock. But till then, the security to ring with this entire area has been increased, and to avoid any such incident, because these are sporadic protests. These Tibetan activists are coming out and protesting in spurts. This is not an organized or a well-planned protest of large numbers. They are collecting in small areas in and around these small lanes, because there have been barricading around this area and the areas have been cordoned. All the traffic movement has been also being disrupted. There are a lot of diversion of traffic around this area to ensure that the better security is put in place for the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping.
Right, Shamya, also what is interesting is that Tibetans, in a way, asking for India's support, isn't it, for the cause of their autonomy. Is that the reason why they are miffed that the Chinese premier should be visiting India? And is their main demand that India should raise the issue of their autonomy with China?
Well, yes, that is exactly what these protesters were demanding. They are demanding that the Indian government would try and pay heed to their demands and take it up with the Chinese premier who is right now in New Delhi. They have been demanding the government's support and the fact that this issue of Tibet should be flagged off by Narendra Modi in his talks with the Chinese premier while he is over here in India. Now, these demands that they have been carrying out is for a while now. Every time we have been seeing that somebody from China, any official from there would be coming over here from the government's end, they would try and raise this issue with them. But this time around, it was the Chinese premier himself who was here. And they have been demanding that the autonomy of Tibet be restored and that it should be given its independence.